Okay, let's get this started here. So I'm probably not gonna continue doing these Blender streams next week. I mean, I'll probably get back to doing music. Maybe you heard, but I was tweaking this track a little bit as it was playing, and I don't know. I kind of miss making music already, and it's only been a few days, maybe like 6 days, something like that. But yeah, same idea as last time. I'm not gonna link all those resources as last time, just because well, I'm running kind of late on this stream, and I just want to get it started. So I'm just gonna sit back, listen to some of these SCP stories, and I linked his channel, his playlist below. So yeah, I mean, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Otherwise, I'm just gonna, I don't know, just gonna turn off my brain and try and come up with something. And I know I keep saying these are pixel art streams, and this isn't really pixel art per se, but I don't know. I've been learning this new technique, and I kind of want to just refine it a little bit by bit. You know what I mean? So it's not exactly pixel art, and probably won't be what you're expecting. But to be honest, I don't really care. I just want to do this, so I'm just gonna continue. I mean, I'm just playing with you, so yeah, I got nothing else to say. I mean, I don't know. Fuck it. Let's just get started.
SCP 3088 Law of the Land. The laws of our universe are generally immutable. They can't be altered, removed, or added to. As we've seen again and again with the SCP universe, however, rules are meant to be broken. Entities such as reality benders regularly bend or break the laws of physics, but it's rather uncommon for an average human to suddenly develop such an ability. The SCP I'll be looking at today concerns an average man in an average town that developed a very unusual ability and used it with the best of intentions. SCP-3088 is the town of Cullen, Nebraska, and the area contained within its limits. Cullen is subject to an anomalous alteration of reality in which any law, bylaw, or town ordinance passed by a legally empowered individual becomes an immutable law of reality itself. This means that anyone present within the town's boundaries are unable to break any existing law within the town, either intentionally or accidentally. This includes the total inability to leave the town and the removal of all firearms, both of which present a bit of an issue for the Foundation. An individual named Thomas Ronson is currently the mayor of Cullen and the only person known to be legally empowered to pass laws, although whether or not he's anomalous himself is unknown. The Foundation first discovered the town when a civilian trapped within Cullen tried calling the sheriff's office of a nearby town, with the resulting call being terminated mid-conversation. At the same moment, all wired and cellular traffic into or out of the town ceased. Of course, an MTF was sent in to investigate initially, with an audio log being sent out 19 hours after entry. Immediately after entry, their firearms vanished into thin air, and all of their phones stopped working, both cellular and satellite. They also found that they couldn't leave, as whenever one of them made to move to back out, they'd freeze up and stop. The town seems normal enough otherwise, although the inhabitants are all on edge, as they definitely know something is wrong here. They spoke to a waitress who confirmed that none of their phones work, not for a number of days, and their internet connections no longer function either. Everyone is pretty aware that the mayor is to blame, with people either in terror or awe of him, or both. The MTF doesn't think that they're in any immediate danger, as the people are merely spooked, not wild. One of the team managed to rig their radios to instead send out high-frequency radio data pulses, allowing the message to get back to the Foundation. They received another message a couple days later, in which the leader assumes that the Foundation has cordoned off the area around the town, although they can't actually see anything but empty roads around them. Two of the team walked the outer edge of the town's limits, remarking that it felt like a wall made of glass. They've also learned that any law passed here becomes impossible to break, which means that there's no litter anywhere because of an ordinance prohibiting litter. They haven't been able to get close to the mayor for the same reason, as there's apparently a law prohibiting people from barging into his office. Instead, they have an appointment scheduled to meet him in 4 days. Lastly, they tell the Foundation to have someone on the other side set their radio to their walkie-talkie frequency to try and have a conversation. This ends up working, so the team lead speaks with a member of the containment team, telling them that so far no harm has come to the MTF, and the town seems stable for now. They say that they can sort of feel all of the laws here if they even think about breaking one. They've also learned that it's illegal to be unemployed here, so most of the town is employed by a few large textile mills. The containment member says that those mills apparently shut down years ago, and the town was in real trouble because of it. They also tell the MTF that the site director in charge of 3088 is hoping to have some progress made on getting the whole thing under wraps, and they don't plan on sending in any more human assets. Their conversation gets interrupted as they spot a civilian that had been spying on them and ran off. The team sends out another message 4 days later, in which they say that they didn't end up catching that civilian, as they lost him in a nearby forest that's apparently within the town limits. They guess that he's working for the mayor, because about an hour later, a new law was passed, which they could feel popping into their heads. The new law prohibits inhabitants from talking to anyone outside of the town at all, which is why they're just recording a message in which two of the MTF are conversing with one another. They had the meeting with the mayor, but it didn't go well, as he seems unhinged. They couldn't do anything to the mayor besides talking to him, and he started rambling about fixing the town, and since the meeting they've noticed a number of people following them. They've set up another meeting with the mayor tomorrow, but unless they find some sort of loophole that lets them take him out or break into his house or office, they're gonna run out of options soon. Around 3 days later, a localized restructuring event occurred, causing all people, man-made structures, and objects within the town's boundaries to disappear, with the exception of one house at the center of the area. All anomalous activity within the area also ceased, neutralizing the SCP. Inside of the house, they found official documentation regarding newly passed laws in the town of Cullen, and the personal diary of Mayor Thomas Ronson. Since I never pass up a chance to read a diary from an SCP verbatim, let's go ahead with that. I did it. I won. I've been elected the mayor of Cullen. Well, I say I won, but I didn't do it alone. I had a great team of people to help me out. I've lived in this town for over 40 years and seen it steadily get worse and worse through a combination of corruption and ineptitude. But now that I'm mayor, things are going to change. I can get the town back on its feet, help the people here improve their lives. We had our first open hall today, where I laid out my plans for the future to the people of this good town. They generally seemed receptive, which was heartening. A few people were skeptical that I'd be able to reopen the mills, which is fair, but I think it will be doable. They didn't go out of business, after all. They were sold out by that bastard Hastings to line his pockets before he left town. Anyway, it looks like I have the support of the people. I'm gonna start small, though. I've guaranteed some extra funding for the high school so they can make some vital repairs, and I passed an ordinance banning littering in the town, since it's starting to look a real mess. May not sound like much, but if people are going to believe things can change, they need to see tangible proof, and quickly. I think small improvements like this will go a long way to changing people's attitudes. Had some good news today. Omaha Textiles are interested in getting the mills running again. I like to think it was my incredible sales pitch that did the job, but the reality is it was probably just good timing. They've apparently been looking to expand for a while now. Still, I'm not going to question such a good opportunity. The people of Cullen are honest, hard-working folk, but unemployment has been a real problem here. Getting the mills reopened may restore the hope people have lost over the years. Oh, looks like litter ordinance is already paying dividends. Only 2 days and the town is almost looking spotless. Must have inspired the people to pitch in and clean the place up. Was talking to Clayton this morning, and apparently there hasn't been a single reported crime in the week since I became mayor. It would probably be a little egotistical to think that's due to my influence, but it's a nice thought. We've begun work on a plan that will ensure every unemployed person in town will get a job in the mills once they reopen, which should be in a few weeks. There should be more than enough jobs available for everyone, and once everyone is back at work, we can start looking at the local economy. Maybe people will start opening new business on the high street again. Something strange happened today. A couple of days ago, we passed a bill mandating the repair of the flood banks on the river. Since they broke and flooded half the town a couple of years ago, it's been a huge worry every rain season, and it seemed like a trivial task to relieve the constant stress people living near the river were suffering. I went down with a couple of construction contractors this morning to assess the work requirement, and the bank was as good as new. No sign it was ever damaged at all. It would have been weeks of work. No way it could have been done quietly, and yet there it is, sturdy as the day it was made. Clayton says there still haven't been any crimes either. Nearly 3 weeks. I'm not complaining. Most mayors would kill to get zero crime, but it is weird. Not so much as a parking ticket or speeding penalty. Apparently, his officers are just sitting on their hands all day. Damien came back to town today. I guess he tracked me down because I almost walked right into him in the middle of town. I thought he was going to do something stupid. He looked like he was reaching into his coat for something, had an angry look on his face, but then he just froze. Started looking real confused. Stood there like that for nearly a minute, me and him staring at each other. Then he just turned around and left. I had Clayton pay him a visit at his motel room, and he apparently had a gun right there on the table, door wide open. Didn't even make a move for it when Clayton drew his own gun and arrested him. Violation of parole and all that. I suspect he's on his way back to Nebraska State, even as I write this. There's definitely something strange going on here. I tested something yesterday. Passed a law mandating that all road damage should be immediately repaired. Something simple that no one would object to. Easy enough to justify, what with the increased traffic the mills will bring in. There has been a pothole in the road outside my house for 15 years. I watched it all night until after midnight. Woke up before dawn, and the pothole was gone. Just gone, like it was never there. I checked the logs just in case, but there's no record of any maintenance crews even getting started yet. All of the roads seem in better shape, too, not just the ones outside my house. Tiny cracks, potholes, even tire marks, all gone. The laws in Cullen cannot be broken. I feel like I'm going nuts just writing it, but I'm sure of it now. I tried speeding on the way to the town hall today, put my foot down as hard as I could. It stopped right at the point where the car hits 30, and didn't even go a fraction over. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get my foot to press down any harder. It was unnerving, like some force was preventing me from moving, like I couldn't control my own body. I've never felt such an awful sensation in my life. The more I think about it, the more I think the situation here could be incredibly beneficial for Cullen. Something clearly unnatural is happening, and I'd be lying if I said that it didn't make me a little nervous, but the possibilities. A town with no crime. A town where issues can be fixed instantly. The good we could do with such a gift. Oh, the mill deal went through. The mills are already beginning to reopen, and the paperwork to make sure everyone has a job has gone through. This will be a great new start for Cullen. It's been a hectic few weeks. Other people have started noticing the weirdness here, which is partially my fault. There were some logistical issues with the mills. None of the supplies or materials were delivered and have been held up for weeks, stuck on a boat in the middle of the Pacific or something. But every single person who would have been working at the mills turned up anyway. The story was the same from all of them. They felt like they had to be at the mill, even though there was nothing to do, and couldn't leave until the end of their shifts, no matter how hard they tried. It came up in a town meeting. Kate Massey brought it up. Seemed hesitant at first, like everyone would think she was nuts. But as soon as she started talking, others started chiming in. The same mill story, or about how they've been unable to speed in their cars, or even swear in public. People started to panic, but I managed to reassure them that there was nothing to worry about, and that we were looking into it. Truth is, though, even if we were, I wouldn't know where to start. There was an incident. Simon Sackwell came at me in the street while I was talking with Clayton about the situation. Started hurling abuse at me, said this weirdness was all my fault, and that I'd damn us all in the eyes of God or some such nonsense. Reached into his pocket, clearly about to pull a gun. I could see the handle. Clayton obviously could too. He shot Sackwell where he stood, right in the chest. He just reacted, even though Sackwell could never have actually used his gun. I guess the same isn't true of police officers. What a waste. I've declared a state of emergency. It might panic people more, but it gives me some interesting legislative power, which I've used to ban firearms within the town. That'll probably rile up the gun nuts, but they'll see it's for the best eventually. We won't have a repeat of this. People started leaving. I wish I could say I didn't blame them, but whatever happened to civic pride, loyalty to your home? Do they not realize the things we could do with this, whatever it is? Over 500 people left in a week. I had to pass a law stopping anyone else from going, so now no one is allowed to leave the town. Cullen will be restored, damn it, and I won't let any narrow-minded fear get in the way of that. Maulings came to me today and told me people had been whispering about going to the press, or the feds, or whoever else. At least I still have some friends left in town. I should have thought about it sooner. It's unlikely that someone hasn't blabbed about what's going on here to someone outside. Don't they realize what would happen if the government or the press got involved here? They'd turn Cullen into a circus. I've temporarily banned the use of phones and the internet until I can get a handle on things here. I'll find a way to set things right, reverse all these emergency laws, and then Cullen will be better than ever. A group of military-looking people in black trucks came into town today, started asking a bunch of questions. They're going to try and cause trouble. I can sense it. Can't imagine there's much they can do, though. The law is the law, after all, and all men must follow it. I've asked John to keep an eye on them for me. Since the phones were shut down, I stopped receiving updates on the mill deliveries. Should have thought about that. I passed a law yesterday that simply read, "The mills shall have the materials they need." Today, every one of them was fully stocked, as if out of nowhere. The people have been turning up to work there for weeks now, so at least they'll have something to do. Hopefully this will begin to turn things around. John said those military folks were at the edge of town today, talking to someone on their radios. God damn interfering sons of bitches. I've passed a law banning anyone from talking to people on the outside at all, so hopefully that will solve the issue. The mills seem to be working. It might be my imagination, but people seem happier. Apparently everything they make is getting shipped somewhere, though no one knows where or how. But there's always plenty of raw material for them to work with. A few more weeks of this and things might be able to get back to normal around here. Had a meeting with the military lot today. I'll have to have a word with Sandra about why she booked that in. Anyway, they came in here and started demanding information about all sorts of things, like they had any kind of authority in this town. I told them they should have just left well enough alone and minded their own business. They looked at me like I was nuts. The conversation was a bit more cordial after that, though nothing really came of it. They are going to keep interfering, I can feel it. I told them I'll think about what they've said. And I will. I'm not an unreasonable man. But I've been given a unique chance to make something of this town, and I won't have it wasted by small-minded military men. I agreed to a short meeting with them again tomorrow. Give enough time to process the other views and all that. Maybe I'll be able to bring them around, but I doubt it. As I expected, the second meeting with that Sorsby fellow went nowhere. He demanded that I reverse all these laws and let the people abandon the town. I told him I would do no such thing. I won't be pushed around by meat-headed military fools. He flat out said he's going to be a problem. Judging by the look on his face, I think he would have shot me right then and there if he was able. I'll have to think of a solution. Obviously, I can't just leave them running around town doing whatever they want. Who knows what trouble they could cause? Why can't they just mind their own business? That bastard Sorsby and his friends nearly started a riot today, riling people up, some nonsense about human rights and votes of no confidence. Don't these people realize I'm trying to do what's best for them? How can they all be so blind? Well, I'm going to put an end to this once and for all. First, I'll get rid of those interlopers. Then I'll see what I can do about this talk of rebellion. Cullen is a good town, damn it, and I won't have it ruined by the ungrateful attitude of people afraid of a hard day's work. Based on the Foundation's analysis, almost immediately following the final journal entry, a new entry was added to the list of laws, mandating that all military personnel leave the town immediately. The Foundation's prevailing theory is that since this law directly contradicted the previous law preventing people from leaving town, the end result was a reality failure, causing the loss of the town and everyone in it. They have no idea why the mayor's house and its contents remained, but the MTF has officially been declared lost. They say that absolute power corrupts absolutely, and this seems to be a rather clear-cut case of that, albeit one in which the mayor seemed very earnest in his good intentions for the town. There's no explanation whatsoever for why the anomaly emerged as soon as Ronson became mayor, but that doesn't really matter in the context of the story itself. It's definitely a tragic story, both for the loss of the town itself as well as the MTF. But in the end, the problem took care of itself, so the Foundation probably isn't too upset. Sarcasm. The nature of belief and faith is certainly a powerful one, regardless of the concept of a deity or deities, but even just looking at the power, control, and influence that believers can possess. From the widespread influence of the Vatican to the utter control of a small cult leader, faith has been a prominent aspect of our species for thousands of years. We've already looked at one religion in the SCP universe, the Church of the Broken God, but now we'll discuss their counterpart, the Sarkic cults. Sarkicism is another very large topic within the SCP universe, and this would be a very long video if I tried to cover it all. So let's just try and get a good idea of what Sarkicism is, and why it has its followers. Sark means flesh in ancient Greek, which summarizes the overall belief system of the Sarkites, which is diametrically opposed to the Church of the Broken Gods theology based on technology. In fact, most Sarkites don't actually refer to themselves using the term Sarkic, as the term was an insult created by the Church of the Broken Gods' predecessors. That is not to overemphasize the Sarkites' opinion of the Church, as it is believed that while the Church views the Sarkites as a sort of biblical foe, the Sarkites seem to view the Church as simply another obstacle. The Sarkic cults are generally divided into two different factions that operate in vastly different ways, but follow mostly the same set of beliefs. The proto-Sarkic cults are those found in small, isolated communities across Europe and Asia. These communities are usually poor, superstitious, technophobic, and generally hostile to any outsiders. The Neo-Sarkic cults, on the other hand, are found in much more urban environments, and can be difficult to differentiate from other wealthy city dwellers. They are usually upper class, coming from affluent families, and with no apparent objections to technology and modern life. Both cults, however, believe that one of the main concepts of Sarkicism is that one can achieve apotheosis, that is, becoming a god. It's generally accepted that Grand Karcist Eon, the founder and prophet of the Sarkic cults, did become a god through some sort of interaction with the primordial goddess, Yaldabaoth. Proto-Sarkites believe that in time, Eon will eventually provide them with godhood, and Neo-Sarkites believe that it must be obtained through willpower, and they must one day usurp Eon. This will-to-power concept is prevalent in Neo-Sarkites, and a common proverb says to do as you will to whom you will, as desire is the measure of all things. Both cults believe in the idea of sacrifice, but here they differ greatly, as Proto-Sarkites believe in the sacrifice of oneself for the benefit of the many, and Neo-Sarkites instead believe in the sacrifice of the many for the benefit of oneself. Either way, belief in cycles of destruction and regeneration is paramount to the Sarkic faith. Both cults often practice ritual cannibalism, human sacrifice, the worship and spread of contagions, and bodily augmentation. Grand Karcist Eon founded the Sarkic cults nearly 4,000 years ago, somewhere in western Siberia. The Sarkic timeline is muddy, even their recent history, but it's believed that Eon was born to a Davite mother and a slave father, as the Davites referred to him as a half-breed. Eon was a slave for much of his youth in the city-state of Adatum, possibly serving under an alchemist or priestess, until he led a slave revolt against the Davites. During this time, Eon demonstrated great power over organic flesh, both his own and others. Examples of this include transforming his hand into some sort of wolf jaw, capable of ripping through a metal jail cell, forcing others to act against their will, such as causing men to throw themselves on their spears, and could also gift these powers and other physical augmentations onto his followers. During this revolt, Eon was aided by 4 disciples, known as the Clavigar in the Sarkic faith, who would go on to be essentially saints. It's unclear how exactly Eon gained his abilities, but it somehow involves Yaldabaoth, a god or goddess believed by the Sarkites to be responsible for creating the universe, possibly through the process of giving birth to other gods, and then devouring them and exhaling the remains. Neo-Sarkites revere this god, but Proto-Sarkites seem to regard it as the enemy of all living things. Yaldabaoth is also joined by 6 other entities, known as Archons, which are described as manifestations of primordial chaos. It's said that Eon endured 6 trials given by the Archons, which allowed him to break free from the bondage of mortal limitations. In one text, Eon claims to have murdered Death herself and read the entrails of the Creator. Regardless of how Eon managed to become godlike, his slave revolt conquered the Davites, forcing them to recede, and the Sarkites built a number of cities, largely composed of organic material. The Sarkic civilization experienced its golden age and spread across Eurasia, with their capital being the converted kingdom of Adatum. Their civilization eventually spread into the Mediterranean, establishing a foothold here and colonizing the various islands. It was here where they would encounter the real resistance, however, as the Mechanites, the precursors to the Church of the Broken God, would rise up against them alongside other civilizations. This massive war involved anomalous technology, huge colossi, monstrous abominations, and 20 to 30 million casualties. The war ended with really no winners, as the Sarkic Empire broke apart and went into hiding, leading to a division in culture and theology. The Mechanites dwindled and eventually became the Church of the Broken God, and the devastation led to the collapse of the Bronze Age. Sarkicism would continue to live on in small communities throughout Eurasia, and their belief systems would slowly differ. At this point, it's completely unknown what happened to Grand Karcist Eon, and the Foundation is currently not even sure if he ever existed at all. Eventually, certain Sarkites would become intertwined with some noble courts, acting as advisors or court magicians, teaching the lords and ladies about alchemy, astrology, and the occult, while spreading belief in Sarkicism. These courts would become Sarkic great houses, practitioners of Neo-Sarkicism that follow their own interpretation of the religion. Both Proto-Sarkites and Neo-Sarkites would maintain their numbers through generations of inbreeding, avoiding genetic defects through Sarkic rituals, and Sarkites have shown vastly lower mortality rates compared to normal populations. Both groups also adhere to a strong belief in secrecy, whether through mistrust or necessity, and so Sarkicism is largely unknown to the wide world. So, most Sarkites present a dangerous threat to the current world order, as the Foundation considers their speculated goals to be fairly apocalyptic in nature, although not all Sarkites are dangerous, such as SCP-2815, a village of inbreds that give out human flesh disguised as fruit that for some reason is safe to eat. They also donate organs and blood grown from a tree to local hospitals. Sadly, however, these benign examples are few and far between, and we're left mostly with highly anomalous and dangerous entities. I would be doing many of these SCPs a disservice by only quickly summarizing them here instead of giving them their own videos, but I'll provide a few examples. SCP-2480 is one of the more notable ones, a dimensional anomaly located in a town in Massachusetts. The anomaly is causing Sarkite monstrosities to bleed into our reality, either from another dimension or another timeline. The GOC and the Foundation are currently working together to contain the situation, but this is connected with another SCP located in Romania, SCP-2191. Here, a massive entity spread across hundreds of thousands of square kilometers of tunnels, believed to be a concubine of Grand Karcist Eon. This entity is fed liquefied human remains, provided to it by a species of mutated, vampiric humans. It's also appeased by locals who provide human sacrifices to minimize seismic activity. SCP-2133 is a proto-Sarkic commune in Russia, whose inhabitants are reincarnated whenever they die, possessing all of their past memories and appearance. They deposit their turnip harvests and any gangrenous limbs or tumorous growths in the church every evening, and the village is also filled with dark red tentacles that attack any outsiders entering the church. Beneath the church is an expansive series of tunnels and caverns, where there seems to be thousands of entities growing in eggs, as well as a temple devoted to a Karcist. There is possibly a strong connection between SCP-2133 and SCP-610, the Flesh That Hates. I've already made a video covering 610, which Sarkites refer to as the Red Death, and it's believed that this is the Sarkites' ultimate weapon in reshaping the world. Massive Sarkic organisms containing human DNA are believed to have battled the captured Colossus, SCP-2406, during the war between the Sarkites and the Mechanites. Another large organism was used as a Sarkic temple in their Golden Age, SCP-2095, but eventually was conquered during the war and died. SCP-2075 is a Karcist that was captured by the Foundation, but easily broke containment when it revealed that they had only captured one small aspect of itself, along with 2 of the security personnel assigned to the SCP. The doctor in charge was stabbed with an anomalous dagger, which seemed to transform him into a large amorphous mass of flesh and bone, which proceeded to kill 56 personnel before dying. Finally, there is SCP-2510, an important anomaly related to both the Church of the Broken God and the Sarkic cults. 2510 is a larger machine, and part of it has been made into a trans-dimensional gateway. The first people reported to have gone through the gateway, in 1940, were said to have found a machine city. The gateway destination can be controlled, and the Foundation sent a team to multiple dimensions, all variations of Earth. There's too much here to really go into detail, but to summarize, these dimensions were each one where the war between the Sarkic cults and the rest of humanity came to a climax. In one of them, parts of the Broken God were fashioned into an unimaginable weapon that wiped out every trace of life from the planet. In others, the Sarkic forces went out, and Yaldabaoth broke free from its cage, driving the world to a horrific apocalypse. In another reality, however, humanity banded together and achieved a technological singularity, uniting to defeat the Sarkites. The lesson to be learned from this anomaly is that if humanity doesn't work together and embrace the Church of the Broken God's ideology, the Sarkic cults will win. Since there's really no canon, however, this is just one perspective. So, this should have provided a good jumping off point to continue learning about Sarkicism as it's continually expanded. In the majority of cases, it's very easy to look at the Sarkic cults as nothing more than threats to humanity, and that seems to be the general consensus for most of the community. While some might boil down the conflict between the Broken God Church and the Sarkites to just good versus evil, good fiction is rarely as simple as that. Regardless, Sarkicism and its anomalies are a very interesting blend of religion, folklore, occultism, and body horror. Apotheosis, Part 2. A radical turn of events has changed the world, with millions of anomalous humans roaming the Earth, and the SCP Foundation struggling to save those that haven't changed. A paradigm shift of normalcy is occurring, and even though the Foundation is completely outgunned, they remain steadfast in their goals. We pick up from part 1 with the Foundation clearly losing the war, and the comic book style action really ramps up in the tale A Farewell to Arms, followed by some more world building and discussions from the anomalous side in A New Age of Magic. We open up with a remote conversation between the members of the O5 Council, the 13 leaders of the SCP Foundation. At least one of them is completely losing hope in the wake of such drastic circumstances, as some of the affected humans are going on the offensive and wiping out Foundation sites. During the call, they are notified that they just lost 2 more mobile task forces, one of which was wiped out somehow by an anomalous living mountain range, and the other defected from the Foundation rather than fighting the mutants. O5-2 says that they need to divert all of their resources to focus on containing or neutralizing humans affected by SCP-3088. O5-3 replies that it doesn't really feel like the SCP Foundation to be putting most of humanity into camps and labs, but 2 retorts that it's still just containment of anomalies, and nothing has changed except for the scale and the budget. There won't be a humanity left if they don't manage to do this properly. The Council puts it to a vote, of which a handful vote in favor, 3 of them vote against, and the rest abstain, putting the Foundation firmly at war against the mutants. O5-2 disconnects from the call afterwards, situated in one of 13 bunkers located in highly secretive places around, inside, or near the planet. These bunkers are filled with the most advanced technology on the planet, and O5-2 specifically is a massive structure surrounding a single central room located a kilometer beneath the desert. This bunker would normally be impervious to any earthquake, hurricane, or even asteroid that tried to harm it, but currently it had a huge hole in it, thanks to some enterprising mutants. The bunker surrounding O5-2's room is a labyrinth that utilizes anomalous machinery to bend space, meaning that if someone doesn't know the exact correct path to the center, you could walk for 100 kilometers inside of the bunker and never get close. Miles of these corridors were currently destroyed, with turrets sitting as smoking wrecks and a number of humanoid bodies lay torn apart. One indistinct melted red corpse has its fist embedded in the broken remains of a Scranton reality disruptor, the air around it sputtering and rippling. A broken laser grid defense system quietly whirs with sparks dripping off of it, and a motionless body made of sparkling crystal lay in pieces in front of it, covered in scorch marks. Further into the bunker, whole walls are torn apart and corroded, one chewed to pieces by a swarm of fiery moths, and another had been turned to rock candy before being shattered. A turret was currently being chewed on by a T-Rex made of plasma. Someone's body had been crumpled by reality compressing to 2 dimensions before being rolled up into non-existence. A missile the size of a person was hovering in the air, encased in bone, and a defense drone had been melted into a puddle of cheese. The Scranton reality anchors placed throughout the facility had simply sat and watched, defenseless against such an impressive tide of anomalous forces. In the central room, O5-2 and 2 Foundation agents were preparing for the inevitable breach of mutants. They were each inside of a highly advanced suit of armor that made them effectively anomalous themselves, with an AI to assist with combat maneuvers. Their only problem was that there were really only 2 of them to fight. The suits were highly experimental, and they were still powering up. As the attacking mutants explosively breach the wall of the central chamber, one of the agents, Palinez, puts up a force field to block a massive blast of fire from a mutant's hand. A mutant with 2 arms that are holding 2 more arms made of brass is leading the charge of about 25 total mutants. The agents don't back down, however, and Agent Figueroa knocks the first wave back with a pulse of energy before shooting a gray-skinned, 2-headed man in the chest with a laser. Another mutant extends their veins and arteries out of their body, now ending in sharp points, and begins trying to pry into Figueroa's suit, while another blasts her with magma. The suit releases a burst of electricity to deal with the vein mutant, but they held on while screaming in pain. Yet another mutant, one with only mouths on its face and neck, opens them and screams with devastating sonic force, but Figueroa manages to swing the vein mutant into the path of the waves, disintegrating him. 1 down, 24 to go. Meanwhile, Agent Palinez had just barely managed to escape from another plasma dinosaur, eliminating it with a magnetic field generator, but an older mutant had affixed both of Palinez's feet to the floor with an ultra-strong adhesive. The same mutant was now working to dissolve the suit of armor using acid, while 2 other mutants restrained him. Palinez diverted some extra power to his right leg to dislodge it, taking some floor with it, and then proceeded to cut the older mutant in half with an energy blade, but the acid was doing its work. A mutant in the back named Rita had been waiting for her opportunity, and now it was here. She extended a single hair from her arm, which rapidly grew in length, and stretched across the room towards Palinez, who desperately tried to blast it away. The single hair wormed its way into a millimeter-wide breach in the suit created by the acid, and weaved its way through the layers and cracks, past the undersuit, and onto the agent's skin, where it touched a hair on his arm. In Rita's mind, she spoke a single word, the one that was now etched onto the DNA of her every cell: thrive. Agent Palinez felt a pinprick on his arm, followed by a shudder through his body, making every hair stand on end. Then, the hairs began to grow quickly, some doubling back into his skin, creating more and more hair, filling the suit. The pressure began to crush him, and the hair suffocated him. To quote the tale, a bad hair day indeed. As Agent Palinez asphyxiated and his heart stops, the suit executes a final command: self-destruct. Pieces of the outer shell shoot out at twice the speed of light as the suit explodes, turning Rita and the 2 mutants that had been holding Palinez into nothing but atoms and light. It's not looking great for the Foundation's team here, as that still leaves plenty of mutants left to fight 1 agent and an overseer. The mutant that had been holding 2 arms steps up, and we learn that this is actually a former SCP, numbered 3589. His real name is Armando Rivera, and his anomalous trait was being able to manifest new arms when his were removed. These arms grew rapidly. He felt no pain during the process, and although it was possible, albeit much more difficult than normal, for an exterior force to remove his arms, he himself could easily pull off his own arms. The new arms he grows can be of wildly random substances and compositions, including animal arms, liquids, gases, or amorphous materials. Additionally, Armando retains some degree of control over these arms after being detached, depending on how many he attempts to control at once. The mutant infection, rather than giving Armando a completely new ability, magnified his existing anomalous trait to new heights. He now has far greater control over his detached arms, and can actively choose what substances his new arms are composed of. Being a former Foundation prisoner, it's pretty clear that Armando has a personal vendetta here. Armando creates an arm composed of a high explosive, and using several more arms in a chain, wraps it around Agent Figueroa's neck before detonating it. The explosion throws the remaining mutants backwards and fills the room with smoke, but another mutant manages to convert the smoke into a large number of metal needles, which he throws at the agent. The agent, however, deflects the needles into a different mutant, and activates an artificial gravity generator to bring the mutants to their knees. Activating this took a big chunk of the suit's power, but Figueroa hopes to pick them off while they're pressed down. She approaches a gold-skinned woman, but the woman manifests a shield around herself and the scaly man next to her. Rather than trying to break the shield,
Figueroa amps up the gravity generator for a split second to crush the two of them, but this causes the generator to shut down. Figueroa is in a tough spot, as Armando's explosion had managed to crack her armor, her partner was dead, and her suit was running out of power. By this point, only 3 mutants remained. As Armando and another mutant rush Figueroa, the agent lets loose a sonic pulse, blocked by Armando growing the wing of an extinct, anomalous bat. The other mutant leaps into the air, and Armando uses several arms to swing him downwards towards the agent. Figueroa puts up a shield to block the attack, but the mutant suddenly increases his mass 100-fold, smashing through and knocking Figueroa to the ground. Armando pins her there with 17 metallic arms, while the other mutant uses his ultra-dense fists to continually smash her. The armor was really in trouble now, and Figueroa activates a magnetic repulsor field to send the metallic arms flying. She then utilizes a psychic amplifier to liquefy the other mutant's brain. She wasn't out of trouble though, as Armando had manifested the front leg of a Brachiosaurus and was slamming it down towards her face. She manages to block this though, and fires 2 balls of energy at Armando. Using several long tentacles, Armando manages to tear off some of Figueroa's armor as she sends him flying with a shockwave. Growing desperate, Armando manifests more mass than he's ever attempted before, growing an arm with a nanometer-thick neutron star skin, which is rather ridiculous to say the least. The sheer force of gravity from this arm pulls Figueroa straight towards him, and he proceeds to slam the arm into her midsection, the blow sending cracks spiraling through the suit of armor and breaking the faceplate. Despite this, Figueroa was confident that she would be victorious, as she reaches to her side and throws a null grenade into the air. The gravity of the arm pulls the grenade in, but Armando tosses the arm away as hard as he can. The grenade explodes, leaving an empty void of reality where the arm was. Using her last bit of suit power, Figueroa diverts energy to her palms, releasing a blast of continuous blue plasma towards Armando. Armando began manifesting arms as quickly as he could to block the attack, but things were looking dire. Suddenly, though, Figueroa stopped, the plasma disappearing as she lets out a single cry of pain. Her right arm and face swiftly turn to translucent crystal, and Armando turns to see the other mutant still living, who was on the floor, straining to keep her 4 eyes open. This mutant had the ability to turn anything she focused on into salt, and although the suit was rapidly reversing the transmutation, it was too late for Figueroa, whose heart crystallized. The other mutant succumbed to her injuries at this point, leaving only Armando and 05-2 in the room. Despite the 05 being equipped with the same suit as the other 2, he was not prepared for combat, and Armando soon stood victorious over the shattered remains of his suit. As 05-2 coughs up blood, he asks Armando if it was worth all the lives he had to throw away to get here. Armando finds that pretty ironic coming from an overseer of the Foundation, and says that every one of them volunteered for this battle. They knew what they were doing, and had decided that the reward of a brand new world with no cells was worth it. Armando says that he doesn't think there's a place in this new world for him, though, and proceeds to strangle 05-2. Another crack in the foundations of the old world, hewn by the dead citizens of the new. Let's take a break from the action for now and look at the overall situation from the affected human's perspective. The following section is written as a Serpent's Hand document, and it seems members of a large number of factions are sharing communications through the Serpent's Hand, including Monica's faction in Old Vegas, the Church of the Broken God, and members of the Sarkic cults. According to the Serpent's Hand, the activation of SCP-3088 was a merging of mankind and the Fae, as it had been at some point in the past before separating. The veil over the anomalous was broken, and the SCP Foundation, the GOC, and even the UIU have crumbled because of it. Jake from Old Vegas chimes in to say that he knows the Foundation, and it's foolish to think they're done with them yet. At this point, at least 1 in 3 humans have been affected by SCP-3396, and very little can compare with their combined might, with more humans being converted every day. None of the Serpent's Hand members are aware of the source of the changes though, that being SCP-3396, since the infection has spread way beyond that location. Even if they were aware of it, it wouldn't exactly explain things, since whatever is behind 3396 seems to be impossible to communicate with. We're given an illustration taken from the 7th book of Apocryphal Visions that is believed to depict current or future events regarding this awakening, but they're not sure what it means. We'll find out later. Moving on to discussing what they do know, they know that every human affected by the change shares 3 traits. 1 being the growth of new, luminescent organs throughout the body, possessing magical barriers that no one has been able to bypass thus far. These organs provide the magical energy needed to power the individual's abilities, and the author suggests that a single affected individual can produce more energy than the strongest living magic users. The second trait these humans share is the mutations, which is a concept that has existed previously in the world of magic, but usually only when rituals went wrong, and never in a positive way. They have attempted to try and figure out exactly how the mutations, the organs, and the fluid from 3396 works, but so far they've been completely unsuccessful. It seems to defy any sort of previous thinking they had on the matter, as the entire process is governed by a single word: thrive. Somehow this command generates its own magical domain and source of magic in a way that defies fundamental magiphysics. Since you're likely not a wizard, it's okay if you don't understand all that, because the Serpent's Hand doesn't either. The third commonality between the affected humans is that they all are linked together in a magical network, the epicenter of which seems to be in the western United States, in an area controlled by the Foundation. This would, of course, be 3396, but again, they're not sure yet if that's where the source of the power is, or just a geographic focus. There's just a lot that they don't know or understand about the whole thing, although they have a tremendous amount of respect for it, and obviously the Serpent's Hand couldn't be happier with the shift in normalcy. An excerpt from the 7th book of Apocryphal Visions states, "You will wake within the chrysalis and see the self that is written beyond the lids of the eye. The serpent shall shed its scales and spread its roots. When blue stars shine in the light of Father, the meaning of life will be known. The spawn of daughter will be made to thrive." Again, we'll get some explanation for that later. Since the breakout of the infection, there have been 3 primary theories about the nature of the event. Most Sarkites believe that this event was brought on by the victory of Grand Karcist Ion over Yaldabaoth. Neo-Sarkics have long believed that Grand Karcist Ion, the traditional leader of the Sarkic cults, was killed some time ago, while the Church of the Broken God believed that he was instead imprisoned. Proto-Sarkics believe that he instead ascended beyond this plane of existence to do battle with the creation deity, Yaldabaoth, on humanity's behalf. They now believe that he was victorious and has consumed the divine flesh, blessing the chosen people of Earth so that they can create a utopia. It would seem that there has been violent reactions between the 3396 infection and Neo-Sarkic Karsus, who served Yaldabaoth, which supports this theory. Thanks to the popularity of this theory, Sarkicism belief is at an all-time high across the globe. defectors of the Foundation and the GOC instead believe that this event was caused by an anomaly responsible for the original creation of life. The presence of anomalies throughout history suggests that humans by their nature are not natural entities, and the sudden awakening of magical powers seems to be an evolution of this trend. In other words, they believe that humans were created by a deity to be singularly unique, and this breakout of magical abilities is just another step on humanity's evolutionary ladder. They are divided, though, on whether or not the deity responsible is the Abrahamic God or some other creator deity. The third theory, held by the Church of the Broken God and some older members of the Serpent's Hand, is that even though the abilities gained by the mutations are incredible and positive, they stem from a non-benevolent force. This shift in normalcy has undoubtedly led to a massive spike in global instability, and it's possible that whatever force is responsible for this may be interested in conquering or enslaving humanity in this time of disharmony. Who or what this entity is, though, is impossible to say, with the Broken Church suggesting that it's Yaldabaoth, but Sarkites insist that Yaldabaoth would choose the color red for mutations, not blue. Robert Booooooorrrring, the head of the Church of the Broken God, writes that he doesn't believe it to be Yaldabaoth nor Grand Karcist Ion. All he knows is that it isn't the work of Mechane, the Broken God, and the spread of magic across the world terrifies him. Another individual expresses complete disdain for whoever or whatever mutated them, because they are an ugly mess now and they can't eat or sleep anymore. A member of the Serpent's Hand responds, telling them that even though it's hard, they'll come to see that their true self is a beautiful thing, and this is merely a trial before paradise. A former Foundation site director who was an expert on ancient thaumaturgy chimes in, saying that she studied the Garden of the Second Sun and reverse-engineered rituals of the ancient Devas. She says that magic has infinite manifestations, sources, and rules, none of which universally apply, except for one. Everything has a cost. Humanity is currently ascending thanks to magic, perhaps all the way to godhood. She wonders what price will be asked of us for this, and what will happen when they can't afford to pay it. With that, we'll leave off part 2 of the Apotheosis story. The scales have definitely tipped towards the new humanity, and life on Earth has fundamentally changed. The final part of the story will reveal the insights we've been looking for, and find out exactly in which direction humanity is heading. We'll also catch back up with Monica, who continues to evolve. Will the Foundation ultimately prevail and restore Earth to normal? Or will humanity become an unrecognizable form, alien to its prior mundane existence? There's only one way to find out. SCP-4010. Attempt to look at what we accomplished. One of the more common requests within the SCP community is for a single, unified timeline of the SCP universe. This is, of course, a rather impossible task,
Not because of the thousands of entries of different SCPs and tales, but because of the myriad of different canons and unique timelines within the universe. As it turns out, though, fans weren't the only ones interested in seeing such a timeline, as the Foundation itself had the idea of mapping out their own history of the universe. Since we're here to discuss an SCP, though, you can probably guess that it didn't go as planned. SCP-4010 concerns a single researcher, Madeline Saylor, who received a message from one of the O5s in which they inform her that she's been selected for Project Kronos, an attempt to establish a complete chronological timeline. They're not forcing her onto the project, but if she accepts, she'll be completely isolated from the rest of the Foundation until the project is finished, for the purposes of confidentiality, with an estimated completion time of 1 year. She replies that she needs time to think about it and asks how urgent it is. The O5 responds with a single word, very, resulting in Madeline accepting. Why exactly the Foundation would urgently need a complete timeline of their universe is pretty interesting, and apparently enough to entice Madeline into the project. Her task is to establish a timeline of documented history as complete as possible, including anomalous events. The entirety of the Foundation database is made available to her, aside from things that they've already ruled out as being unrelated and/or possibly cognitohazardous. The 001 slot is also available to her, but only once she asks for permission, as they think that she should have the basics in place first, since 001 could complicate things a little. Some of the information she will come across must remain in absolute secrecy, even after the project's finished, and they warn her that she'll come across some startling information that she might think is too far-fetched or impossible to be true, but it is. Madeline begins her timeline in very broad strokes, putting down the beginning of the universe and its presumable end, then adding the current date, the approximate time when Earth was formed and when life began, and finally when humans entered the picture. With that done, she begins looking into the database. Setting aside the actual problem of creating a unified timeline, simply reading through all of the SCP entries on the database is a massive task, not even counting all of the extra information that's been made available to her. She goes through about 50 of them in a day, remarking on how some of them even made her laugh, such as the infinite pizza box. A few days go by, and she notes that she found an issue in which years don't match up, and if even 1 year doesn't fit, how can she be sure about the rest? It's possible that it's just a typo, but it could also be a reality shift, something that she heard might be a thing. She decides to get an official response about this to clear it up. A response comes 2 days later, confirming that it is indeed a reality shift, one of many. Madeline laments that they've given her an impossible task, and it would be better to just have the computer automate the task. She soldiers on, though, mentioning that she just read about what happened to Dr. Scranton, alluding to the events of SCP-3001, the Red Reality. This leads to another wrench in the engine, though, as his birth date is listed as 1961, but the Scranton reality anchor was apparently invented in 1889. She ponders if there's multiple Dr. Scrantons, such as relatives, or if it's just another reality shift, which she remarks would be ironic, considering his invention of reality anchors. On the 11th day after starting the project, she realizes that she never put down the date of the Foundation's start, and begins digging into that. Most of the data regarding the Foundation's origin is locked behind SCP-001, which she hasn't requested access for yet. She knows that the Foundation's civil war, which resulted in the creation of the Chaos Insurgency, occurred between 1924 and 1933, so the Foundation must have existed for some time prior to that. Some documents she's found suggest that the Foundation or a Foundation equivalent existed since the medieval ages, or even before.
This leads to an especially big wrench in the engine as she gets to SCP-2000, the complex underneath Yellowstone that can restart the world. This means that all of the recorded dates and years could be completely wrong, and the fact that an entire population of humanity might have preceded them, possibly multiple times. She continues soldiering on though, as she's already gone through 9% of the database. She's not going in order, but instead just picking one thing by another however she feels like, making small holes in this giant pile she needs to take apart. She ends up liking SCP-140, the Davite book, as it rewrites history, but at least it writes down how. 3 weeks have gone by now since the start, and she wishes that she would get a break once in a while, as she hasn't really spoken with any other staff. She remarks on SCP-999 being a large, amorphous, gelatinous mass of translucent slime, and wonders how many of those types of creatures they seem to have, along with statues that move when not looking at them. She finally decides to take a week-long break, but nobody seems to notice or punish her for doing so. She eventually discovers thaumatology, also known as magic, and wonders why they're not allowed to know that magic exists, as apparently the GOC uses it. On day 51, she writes that she hates herself and wonders why she can't be more cooperative. She just wants to say it in the third person, and says she's such a stupid cognito hazard. It seems that she stumbled upon SCP-426 and wanted to write about it, a toaster that can only be referred to in the first person. 2 months have gone by now, and she's slowly reaching the point of having covered 20% of the database. On day 63, she finds SCP-1609, the remains of a sentient chair that the GOC put through a wood chipper, which she finds to be hilarious. She later reads about SCP-2399, a massive damaged weapon located on Jupiter, with her remarking that she'll never see Jupiter the same way again. She also feels that she experienced a reality shift herself, as she specifically remembers setting a date 10,000 years from now for the arrival of an angry star, but now she can't find it. This would be a reference to the original SCP-1548, the Hateful Star, which has since been removed from the SCP database. She continues to find more inconsistencies among the database, but chooses to wait some more before requesting access to SCP-001. She finds SCP-2845, remarking on how gross it is that they have a deer god contained by castrating people, and that's not even the worst thing about it. She put her morality away almost a month ago when she read about Procedure 110 Montauk. She says that she's here to do this job, not to join the ethics committee, which she also notes does either a very poor or excellent job, depending on individual cases. On day 100 of working on the project, she's covered 32.1% of the Foundation database, and says that the timeline is looking kinda decent when you remove everything contradictory. The problem is that the contradictory stuff keeps popping up, and she doesn't want to ever see another time travel Thaumiel SCP. She's honestly thought about quitting the project, but something in her is curious about whatever it was that deserved the SCP-001 designation, so she finally requests access. Of course, upon being granted access, she's shocked to discover that there isn't just one SCP-001, but instead dozens of proposals for 001. Rather than trying to fit all of them into the timeline though, she decides to try and figure out which one is the actual 001 by cross-checking the data with the rest of the database. As it turns out though, not only are all of them contradictory with one another, none of them fit neatly into her current timeline. She starts to question her own sanity while looking at this massive problem, one which severely warps her perception of reality. She decides to accept the Broken God proposal as the real 001, as there's enough dates and documentation to make it seem believable, but she actually hopes that Kate McTierris's proposal is real, the one in which a researcher uses the 001 slot to turn herself into a deity. It's just not that simple though, as if she takes the Gate Guardian as a real 001 proposal, it crosses out the possibility of 4 others as being real. If she starts looking at ones that will apparently happen in the future, such as when day breaks, it would require at least 2 major reality shifts to be possible in their current timeline. She takes another break before buckling down, and soon it's been 150 days since the start of the project. Her timeline is still quite incomplete, as there's so many reality-bending anomalies, time travel machines, and impossible origin stories to consider. She wonders if this is how researcher Talaran suffered in 3999. By day 170, Madeline manages to fit SCP-055 into the timeline, which took a while as she kept forgetting about it. The following day, though, she finds SCP-055 in her sorted pile, even though she hasn't read it yet. She moves on to reading about all the groups of interest, such as Dr. Wondertainment, who reminds her of Willy Wonka. She's bothered by the existence of the Black Queen, as she's terrified of having to deal with infinite universes of anomalies. She hates Are We Cool Yet?, as she's seen far too many of their anomalies from her former research work. She notes that one day the computer says that she's gone through 61% of the database, when the day prior she could have sworn it said 58%. Aside from that though, she figures out a way to deal with all of the conflicting information. She decides to embrace the inherent chaos of her universe, especially since she knows it's a possibility that her existence is due to a bunch of horror writers, and she plans on creating multiple timelines that contradict one another. The following day, though, she looks at the database and sees that there's only 120 left for her to look over, and she's gone through 2,984. She knows there were a lot more than that when she started, and when she looks at her sheet of multiple timelines, she only sees one. When she went outside of her office, she discovered that there wasn't a cafeteria there, because she's no longer in Site 91. Instead, she's in Site 13, but it doesn't seem to be the nightmarish version from SCP-1730. Reality has been reconstructed somehow, but her perception has not changed, allowing her to witness the shift. She decides to continue working on the single timeline, since 1,500 SCPs or so have stopped existing, making the project a bit easier to manage. She's not ruling out the possibility that her work caused the change, since she isn't experiencing any sign of her memories being altered, meaning that she's immune to the shift for some reason. It seems that by slotting everything into a timeline, the universe is correcting itself by removing anything that doesn't fit properly. This has been happening for quite a while now as she's been working, but she's only realized now. At this point, only 43% of the original database remains, and there are only 8 001 proposals. She immediately stops working on the project, but entries continue to disappear from the database regardless. Soon, she finds herself no longer in Site 13, but rather just in Site 3. Since more and more SCPs are being removed from existence, the Foundation's reality is changing as well. Since there's less anomalies around, the Foundation itself would be a lot smaller than it normally is, so they only have a few sites, and there's no O5 Council, instead only a single individual known as the Administrator. The GOC in this version of reality was disbanded after the fall of communism, and the Foundation now has as much funding as the FBI's UIU division normally has. No one else seems to be aware that reality has changed, and as far as they're concerned, Madeline is still just working on a secret project. By day 233, around 25% of the original database is still intact, with 80% of it sorted by Madeline. By day 240, the Foundation no longer exists. Instead, it's just a single building somewhere on the eastern coast of the US, housing around 20 anomalies and 10 researchers, including Madeline. Soon it's down to 12 SCPs, and then 5, with 5 researchers. Madeline was assigned to study one of them, SCP-173, although it's not called that anymore, and it's not nearly as scary, since it moves very slowly now. By day 250, there's only 3 researchers left, and 4 anomalies. SCP-173, some window that shows other places, the Book of Diseases, and Madeline herself. The following day, the book disappeared along with one of the researchers, and they're no longer an organization, but instead just a small group of people that got together on the internet. By day 250, it's just Madeline and 173. Soon it stops moving entirely, becoming an utterly mundane statue, and leaving Madeline as apparently the last anomaly to exist. She says that this world is so much different than hers, with nothing paranormal, no fear, and no wonder. The following day, the statue disappears, and then all of her notes and paperwork about the timeline disappears as well, leaving no evidence whatsoever that the world once contained anomalies. She spends a couple weeks trying to live normally in this new reality, leaving her past behind her, but it doesn't work out. She speaks to a psychiatrist about everything that happened, but of course, they don't believe her. Eventually, though, while browsing the internet for anything related to cryptozoology, myths, and legends, she finds a photograph of SCP-173 standing by a concrete wall. She downloads it as evidence to bring to her psychiatrist, but of course her psychiatrist simply says that she's living in a world that is an illusion. It's clear that Madeline's sanity is starting to slip at this point. She writes up an SCP entry for SCP-173, and on day 346 decides to share the entry on a cryptozoology forum, along with the picture that she downloaded. The people on the forum like the post and begin creating their own SCPs, exciting Madeline and reminding her of the old days. They soon begin making a community around SCPs, and Madeline wants to join, but worries that she might do something wrong and they'll reject her as crazy. On day 360, though, it clicks for her, and she realizes the implications of what she's done, and how her reality might possibly be created by a bunch of horror writers. She knows what she has to do now. She joins the SCP site and writes a new article mirroring the start of this one, in which an O5 proposes to researcher Madeline Saylor that she begin work on creating a timeline of the SCP universe. This apparently resulted in the creation of a paradox, which flipped back reality to what it used to be. She's not at all sure how it worked, but her reality is now being held together entirely due to her little paradox. She now knows that trying to bring order to the chaos of her reality is inherently dangerous, as the anomalies demand chaos. She finishes by writing a new SCP entry describing the effects of the project. SCP-4010 then is described as an act of establishing the timeline of the universe while accounting for every shift in reality and every temporal change documented. This action results in major changes to global reality. She leaves a note explaining that the universe is a very complex place of both order and chaos. The Foundation, and humanity in general, is order, while chaos is the unknown, the things they wish to understand. They fear the chaos, and it's that fear that pushes them forward. SCP-4010 is an act of creating order out of chaos, but the universe runs on chaos and demands to remain broken. She knows how bad of an idea it is to understand and explain everything because she tried and succeeded. In order to fully remove all info about Project Kronos, Madeline erases all of the data, burns all of the physical evidence, destroys the audio recorder she's been using, and finally, destroys herself. Madeline really got the short end of the stick on this one, as the O5 Council really had no idea of the repercussions that creating a timeline would create. At the same time, though, she really performed as well as any Foundation member could hope to perform, and it'd be a real shame if she wasn't given some sort of posthumous award for her actions. The SCP universe is definitely a chaotic one compared to many other fictional universes, filled to the brim with contradictory accounts and information, but that's as it should be. So, whenever someone asks for a timeline of the SCP universe, you can let them know that doing so would drain it of the fuel of chaos that the universe needs to survive.
The Oroboro Cycle, Part 5. In the last part, we looked at the first half of The Way It Ends, a grand tale featuring a small, exceptionally talented team of Chaos Insurgency agents taking down each of the SCP Foundation overseers, one by one. They started with O5-13, severing the contract that the overseers had with death, providing them immortality, and swept through the list. 7 of the 13 overseers are now dead, but while dealing with O5-7, the team lost a crucial member, Anthony, who revealed himself to originally be Vincent Arians, the former cohort of Aaron Siegel. In flashbacks, we've been seeing how Siegel and Arians defected from the Foundation to start the Chaos Insurgency, but now we know that Siegel eventually went back to the Foundation to become O5-1 once again. In this final part of my miniseries, we'll see how Calvin and his team deal with the rest of the Overseers, culminating in their encounter with O5-1. O5-6 is known as the American, a former general that fought in the American Civil War named Rufus King. Somehow, he extended his life prior to ever drinking from the Fountain of Youth, making him by far the oldest current member of the Council. He currently has an office in the Pentagon with the title Special Counsel to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and many military leaders believe his authority is second only to the President, while some believe he supersedes it. It's believed that O5-6 formed the first mobile task force, Alpha 1, Red Right Hand, in order to hunt down members of the insurgency. Not a very subtle man at all, Agent U writes that they once witnessed him opening a beer with a whip, then using that whip to grab the beer from across the room and finish it in a single swallow. In a flashback, we once again see Siegel and Arians discussing the Foundation and their mobilization to deal with the broken god in Mexico. 30 years have now passed after the death of the administrator. Siegel is still incredulous that the Foundation is up and running after their defection, and he wonders who is left in charge there that could be running things so smoothly. He also ponders who among the Foundation staff would be even able to access Site-01. The two are interrupted by their door opening and Sophia Light entering,
a woman that had previously had a relationship with Siegel, but didn't defect with him. Sophia explains that she read the note that Siegel had sent to the current 0513, a note that we read at the end of the children document. Sophia admits that although they've been telling everyone in the Foundation that things are still under control, they are actually scattered and leaderless. None of the current overseers are actually doing anything, and she doesn't know who's actually running things. That's not to say that nothing is being done, but instead orders are coming from someone located within Site-01, and they have no idea who it is. For a while they thought it was Siegel, and then they thought it might be the administrator, but now they really have no idea. They found an entire new wing built onto a site, and SCP-173 is residing there, but they didn't put it there, and they have no records of it being put there. New facilities are being built, more doctors and researchers are being recruited, and even the mobilization to deal with the Broken God was all performed without their command. Somebody within Site-01 is making calls, and their commands are being followed. Sophia wants Siegel and Aryans to go with her to Site-01, and Siegel agrees, as long as she understands that they plan to kill whomever is in there. Before they leave, Sophia confronts Siegel on his defection, saying that even though he killed the administrator because he was supposedly the source of anomalies, why are more and more anomalies popping up? She asks that he make sure he's going to do what he wants, and to consider what Aryans wants as well. The present timeline picks up right after the death of 057, as the crew is fleeing the chaos in Cambodia. They drove overnight until reaching a small inn, where Calvin meets with another agent of the insurgency, revealed to be one of the Delta Command, Kowalski. Kowalski informs Calvin that the American is nearby, and he's the one responsible for sending jets to carpet bomb the town while they were dealing with Green. The American brought an entire army division with him, along with naval and air support. Kowalski heavily warns Calvin about the situation, suggesting they flee and go after the American some other time. He also mentions that a secure container was brought out of Site-19 and placed on the American's ship, most likely as a secret weapon. Kowalski finishes by saying that they are outnumbered at least 3,000 to 1, by an army trained in hunting people down, led by a man who believes that he single-handedly created the most powerful military in the world. Kowalski says that Calvin doesn't win here by being smart, but instead by forcing the American to do something stupid. The team gets back in their jeep and continues driving in order to put some distance between them and the army while they think, and they eventually find a secluded spot near some mountains where they spend the night. In the morning, they notice a drone in the sky, and they get back in their jeep. As they drive off, a tank comes out of the nearby trees, and they narrowly avoid an explosive death. They hear more tanks behind them, along with helicopters and jets overhead. They eventually are forced out of the jungle into the open, and a helicopter opens fire on them. Olivia pulls out a scoped rifle and asks Calvin to stop. She proceeds to take aim and snipes the pilot, claiming that although she used to be an artist, she's been doing this longer. They continue on. Olivia takes out another helicopter, and their jeep approaches a section of badlands between them and the mountains. In front of them, however, are hundreds of military vehicles, with helicopters above them and tanks behind them. A personnel carrier opens up, and a man steps out, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, a brown jacket, jeans, and boots. The American. Adam suggests that they just drive over to him and improvise, which Calvin approves of. Calvin alone gets out and walks over to 056, who introduces himself as Rufus King. He says that he's not here as an overseer, but instead as an American citizen, and his priorities lie first and foremost in America's security. His association with the Foundation has allowed him to strengthen the security of his nation, and he's hoping to keep that situation going for a long time. He's not happy that Calvin broke their contract with death, but he's willing to deal with Calvin despite that. In exchange for letting them go, he wants the spear. Calvin doesn't really understand why they would want it, so Rufus explains. They first found the spear in the grasp of some ancient king, and they spent a great number of lives to get it out due to it being cursed. He doesn't know where it came from originally either, but he does know that it was the spear that a Roman soldier used to kill Jesus Christ. He's not sure how the soldier got a hold of it either, but he says it was the only thing capable of killing him, as it's capable of killing gods. The Foundation is not prepared to deal with an attack by some sort of deific entity, such as Jehovah, Cthulhu, or the flying spaghetti monster, in his words. But the spear could get the job done. If Calvin gives it up, he can go on doing whatever it is he's doing, including killing overseers. Calvin reminds him that that includes him, and the American laughs and says he won't stop him trying to kill him as long as he hands it over. Of course, Calvin says that he cannot, which the American expected, so to give him a sporting chance, he's going to let him run. He shows a large steel crate carried by a helicopter, and says that there's something nasty in there that they've been trying to kill for years, and he's going to open it and point it in Calvin's direction. Whether the thing in the box gets them or his army, he's going to have the spear when this is done. Calvin heads back to the Jeep, and they drive into the Badlands. While driving, Calvin reveals how he got a hold of the spear. When he was younger, he went on a walk with his mother through the countryside, and they came across a lake. His mother turned and said that she recognized someone in the lake, and she proceeded to enter the water and disappear. Calvin saw hundreds of bodies in the lake and followed his mother in, seeing her smile at him as she sank. He fought through the bodies for hours before getting out of the lake, and nobody would believe him about what happened. He went back to the lake recently, not finding any bodies in the water, and he was approached by someone that he barely remembers, like the voice of a person superimposed over a ghost. This entity offered Calvin a choice, taking him back to the moment when his mother was about to enter the lake. Calvin was forced to choose between saving his mother or taking the container that held a weapon that could destroy the Foundation. He chose the spear, and realized that he had always had the container, ever since that day at the lake. The entity approaches him again, and gave him the 2 vials of fountain water as well. Calvin also reveals that he stole Agent U's journal from Marshall of Marshall, Carter, and Dark by punching the old man in the face and running off with it. A few hours later, Adam tells the others that the mountain village he grew up in is nearby, and he might have a plan if the American is cocky and stupid enough to march his army up the mountain. They head to the village with the army in pursuit and find it empty, save for one old man. The man's skin seemed redder than normal, and his face and body bulged in certain areas. Adam asks the man where everyone else is, and the man replies that they are all still here, around us, because the sickness came for them. He says his ascension has nearly arrived as he begins crawling towards them. Adam explains that when he was younger, people here started getting sick with no explanation and no functioning cure, and as they got more sick, they began to change. Eventually, the Foundation arrived to clean it out. He's interrupted as 056 and his army arrives in the village, led by a massive, chained lizard creature, Scp-3088 He says that he's got 2 problems here, and he intends to leave with only one, implying he plans to use the spear to kill 682. The American is whipping the lizard to keep it moving, and eventually it begins charging towards Calvin's team. It's stopped, however, by the old man, standing in the middle of the road. The lizard opens its mouth in disgust and asks what this filth is, and the old man extends his arms and exclaims that he has ascended. His body proceeds to split open and expand, becoming an SCP-610 entity. It lets out a horrible cry, which is joined by many similar sounds coming from the rocks around them. What follows is a full SCP-610 attack, as all of the village people that had been infected were simply lying dormant in the mountains around the village. The Americans' Army Division is hopelessly outmatched and unprepared for this, lacking any incendiary weapons. Massive 610 entities begin flinging some of the Army's trucks and personnel carriers, destroying a helicopter in the process. Calvin's team sprint towards an empty Humvee and begin driving it out of the village when they come to the main square. Here, the old man turned flesh entity is battling the lizard, while the American is riding on the lizard's back. His hat has been knocked off, his shirt is ripped and soaked with blood, and he's racked by fury and bloodlust. Olivia takes out a rifle and fires a shot at him, but he deflects the bullet with his whip. Yes, we've gone full anime now. She shoots again, but he deflects the second shot as well. Third time is the charm, however, as he narrowly misses the third bullet, and it sinks into his heart. 056 dies in shock and disbelief, and a throng of 610 entities rip apart both the American and the lizard. 8 down, 5 to go. SCP-682's bones collapse into dust, but a tiny lizard crawls out of the pile, shoots a dirty look at Calvin's crew, and scurries off. As the team drives away from the village, they discuss their next target, who Olivia says is known as Blackbird. The journal says that he just has a way of showing up, and suddenly Calvin slams on the brakes as a small man is standing in front of their vehicle. He wishes them a good evening and says that he hears they are going to soon be looking for him. 055, Blackbird, is described by Agent U as jovial, friendly, outgoing, and remarkably personable, unique traits among the Overseer Council. Despite this, there are some inconsistencies, as although Blackbird doesn't seem to care for all of the secrecy of the Foundation, he's the head of the department in charge of maintaining records on all the different groups of interest known to the Foundation. Additionally, some sources believe that Blackbird suffers from a multiple personality disorder, and there's a story going around that says when the Chaos Insurgency came across a strange red disk, SCP-093, they used it to go to an alternate dimension that had suffered some sort of religious doomsday. They had found a document in that dimension detailing certain high-ranking members of the religious governing body, and Blackbird was pictured, plain as day. It's also said that one of the staff members rescued from the alternate Site-13, featured in SCP-1730, pointed out Blackbird as a member of the GOC in their world. He apparently takes a special interest in any anomalies that interact with other dimensions. The flashback this time focuses on Calvin's team, sitting in a motel room, with Anthony still alive. Anthony discusses the original defection, the Kingdom of Abaddon, and the creation of the children. He says that, while making the children, they did something truly heinous, and he's half convinced that the Overseers later made a deal with death just to avoid the fires of hell they're all now destined for. He goes on to say that the Administrator had fooled them, and the whole endeavor was a lie just so the Administrator could see if they could create an anomaly instead of discovering them. In the end, those that stayed believed that the children were a net good, that the ends justified the means, and they had created a safer world. Those that defected believed they had done something unspeakable, and the Foundation was rotten to its core. Since the Foundation was much more decentralized then, the defection didn't cause the end of the Foundation, but now the Overseers are the lifeblood of the organization. Additionally, Anthony tells them that underneath almost every Foundation facility is a nuclear device, but at Site-01, there is a system in place that allows a person to detonate all of them simultaneously. This is their plan. In the present, Calvin's team steps out of the vehicle and cautiously approach the man in the road, who raises his empty hands. He takes a bow and introduces himself as Mortimer J. Denning von Kronecker, the 5th Overseer. He says that he came here to meet them, as he's seen many impressive things throughout his life, but has never met anyone who has killed 8 Overseers. Olivia asks why he came here if he knows they're trying to kill him, and he laughs it off, saying that, unfortunately for both of them, killing him isn't going to work. He is willing to demonstrate, asking them to shoot him in the forehead. Calvin and Olivia hesitate, suspecting a trick, so Blackbird pulls out a knife and jams it into his head. He collapses, as expected, blood spurting out, but then the road is illuminated by a purple light. The light pulses twice, there's a distant snapping sound, and the smell of ozone, and then Blackbird appears before them, unharmed. He says that he's anomalous, of course, like most of the Overseers, and he offers to show them what he can do and tell them where he's from. They begin following him, and they notice the sky changing, becoming a deep, rich purple. The landscape begins changing as well, into a cobblestone street in a city they don't recognize. The sky changes again into a sullen gray, and it begins drizzling. He says that this is where he's from, London, the last city on Earth. In this world, the Black Death hit very hard, and a fellow came along who told everyone he had a cure, but it wasn't exactly the plague he was curing. In Calvin's world, the SCP Foundation has this individual contained, as SCP-049, of course, but he's much different in this world. In time, every city eventually fell until London was the only one left. He explains that he can step between different realities at will, and when he was younger, living in this cursed world, he dreamed of living in a happier place. He began hearing a voice from another reality, which turned out to be an alternate reality version of himself, and he followed it. The multiple versions of himself began seeking out other versions of himself until they had gathered all of them, and they unified into a single entity. Now, when one version of him dies, another steps in to take its place. He also says that there's another person out there like him, named Allison. I've only mentioned this character once before, in my Serpent's Hand video, as she commonly goes by the title of the Black Queen, said to be the daughter of Dr. Gears. It's said that there are thousands of Black Queens, which corroborates what Blackbird is saying. The two have a deal going, where she keeps him informed of things, and he shows up anytime she needs a little muscle. Blackbird understands what they're doing, but he doesn't want it to happen, because he doesn't want to risk losing touch with all the different versions of himself. To try and dissuade them, he offers them a way out, but assures them it's a legitimate one, not like the deals the other Overseers offered. In front of them are 3 doors, and standing in front of each door are 3 identical men. Realizing that they weren't going to get anywhere by shooting him, they each stepped through a door. Adam wakes up in a comfortable room with a small fireplace burning and something delicious cooking in the next room. Blackbird appears and tells him he's in Portland, Oregon, as his family briefly stayed here when he was younger. They had been seeking asylum here, but they were denied, leading them to the mountain village. But in this world, they were successfully granted asylum. In this world, his parents are still alive, living in Los Angeles, but he stayed here because it felt like home. He's interrupted by a voice coming from the other room, revealed to be Calvin. Blackbird reveals that he knows Adam loves Calvin, and in this world, they ended up married. Blackbird leaves him by saying that this is a life he can live without fear, a life that is his own. Olivia walks through her door and ends up getting salty water in her face, as she's on the edge of a yacht. In the center of the deck is an easel, a rack of art supplies, and a half-finished painting. Blackbird appears, saying that this is her boat, and she has nothing to worry about in this world except the easel and the sea. She's not convinced enough by this, and a muscular man comes up on deck from below, whom Olivia seems to recognize as someone named Tevin. Blackbird has been watching Olivia for some time, and knows that Tevin is a former lover and an anomalous artist himself, and in her world, she accidentally killed him during a Foundation raid. In this world, there was no accident, and she can take this boat anywhere she wants with him, living a worry-free life. Calvin steps into a grassy field surrounded by woods, recognizing it as a place near the lake where he lost his mother. He and Blackbird watch as a young Calvin walks with his mother near the lake, and bodies begin to appear, causing Calvin's mother to step towards the water. Blackbird says that the reason Calvin didn't save his mother was because he was a scared boy, but now he has the chance. He's shocked, however, when the young Calvin turns to look at them, and then looks to the tree line, where a figure is standing, holding a tube. Blackbird recoils as adult Calvin approaches and takes the tube from the figure. He opens it, and a pair of glasses tumble out, with the name A. Bright inlaid. Adam Bright. Blackbird cries out, asking why the figure would throw all of their endeavors to waste, saying that at least he tried to fix the problem. Calvin realizes that Blackbird was trying to show them each their ideal worlds, and asks why he wouldn't be satisfied by this one. Blackbird says that the other two wanted things that can be reasonably achieved, but all Calvin wants to do is kill the Foundation, all because of this moment. Despite being given the choice to change his life for the better, Calvin is still choosing violence. He puts on the glasses that the figure gave him, and sees that Blackbird is, in actuality, a horrific bird creature covered in rotting flesh, with a swirling mass of faces howling from inside of it. Calvin says that his mother died long ago because of monstrosities like Blackbird, and Blackbird finally decides to leave this reality. The figure tells Calvin to turn the tube over, and two more objects pop out. One is a fishing rod with the words Dr. Wondertainment's Interdimensional Line and Lure emblazoned on the side. And the other is a wiffle ball bat with the words Bird Be Gone by Dado written on it. Dr. Wondertainment you should be familiar with, but Dado is a somewhat comical and mysterious individual responsible for creating a handful of SCPs. Calvin uses the rod to snag Blackbird, pulling both of them to a different location, a wrecked cargo ship, SCP-455, and Calvin proceeds to begin beating Blackbird with the bat. Blackbird flees through different realities and different locations as Calvin follows him.
Yeah, so, I don't mean to interrupt this weird story, but, it's getting late, and I think I'm gonna call it quits here. But, I just wanted to say, I think I'm making good progress here with this Blender stuff. I don't know what I was doing the last few streams. I guess I was just tired or something, but look at this. The grass needs a bit of work, I would say. That tree could be better, but the fence came out really nice. I like the look of this one. Nice and dark with those splotchy, pixelated textures, so... Yeah, I don't know, I guess just scaling down this little scene kind of helped me focus better, as opposed to, like, you know, spinning my wheels trying to come up with stuff, so... But yeah, with that being said, if you wanted to listen, actually, I'll just link that SCP. It is... yeah, just look up that, the Oroboro cycle. It's pretty out there, don't get me wrong, like, the guy even narrating it even said it sounds, like, pretty bizarre, but... I don't know, I was barely listening to it, to be honest, just passive listening, so... Yeah, I think I'm gonna call it quits here. You know, it's getting late, and you know, I gotta wake up tomorrow. So, I'll probably try and stream tomorrow, and I might go through the weekend because I don't know, this little scene, like I'm starting to feel it now. It's not such a drag to do. Not that it was before, but I don't know, just scaling down the little scope of what I'm trying to make actually kind of helps. And what I'm making here is, well, it all started with that fence, right? I mean, I just, like, you make one fence, and you're like, oh, it looks kind of nice because, you know, I've been using a reference, like, online. I just looked up a reference, and I don't know, it helps a ton. So with that in mind, like, I just, you know, I have one fence, may as well make the other three, you know, like, make like a, I don't know, a house or something like that. Like you're in someone's backyard or on their lawn or something. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with this build. Maybe I'll try and rework that tree tomorrow or next stream. But yeah, this is kind of exciting. I'm thinking of you know, throw down some rocks and some grass. I'll use the particle system to get them scattered all nice, and I'm just gonna keep building up this scene, and let's just see where it goes. Otherwise, I don't know. I might want to switch to music soon, but I might do that starting Monday or something, you know, next week. I'm just getting into Blender after about, well, not just Blender, but I mean, like, I'm getting into this pixel art stuff now, and it's kind of fun, to be honest. Like, it's, like, the technique I'm doing isn't even that complicated. I just choose the right resolution, take my brush, and then just start streaking it over and over and over, and then it gives it that nice, like that nice pixelated look. You know what I mean? So it's it's a lot of fun. I mean, but I do want to get back to working on music because I do want to work on that little project of mine, and I gotta be honest, I don't know if I want to recreate the rest of those Mega Man levels in Blender because honestly it kind of got boring and it's kind of annoying, and you know, I thought at first it's like, oh, I could use this new pixel art technique that I've been learning and I could apply it to those models, but I don't know, we'll see what happens. In my opinion, I think the music is probably the most important thing in that project, not the not the poorly created little dioramas. But my whole intention with those dioramas was similar to like that Minecraft video I put out, or you know, like some of the other videos I put out. I wanted to have 3D models that could be animated and that they would respond to the music playing, whether they light up or scale up and down, or you know, they move left and right. So I had the idea for the Mega Mix, like that little project, that if I make those 3D Mega Man levels, then I don't know, it just became overwhelming. It's like, what am I gonna animate? You know, am I gonna build out the whole level because there's like 100 levels to go through, and it takes me like a 2-hour stream just to do one of them. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking I might just scale it back a little bit. I don't know. I'll probably, I mean, if anything, I might just grab some gameplay footage and, you know, just throw it over, but I'll think of something. There's no real deadline to this, and I prefer to keep it that way. It's more just, I don't know, these streams are less about working on that project and more just a way for me to, I don't know, I guess document my progress would be the kind of word or the kind of phrase I'm looking for. Like, I want to work on this project, of course, and, you know, I want to do it, I want to put in a fair amount of effort into it, but I feel like the way I was going about it was just kind of stressing me out and kind of wearing me down a little bit. So, but this is completely different. Like, what I'm doing now, completely unrelated to Mega Man, is like, it's just therapeutic. Like, it's so relaxing. So I don't know how I'm gonna tie in this Blender stuff into that Mega Mix. I might just, I don't know, like animate some E-cans or something and have them glow, or something stupid, something simple. But yeah, I've rambled on enough. I'm gonna head out. I don't know. I'm just thinking about, like, I'm always thinking about this little project. Like, yeah, of course, you know, I want to work on the music, and I will. I enjoy it, but just this 3D aspect is what's bugging me. It's like, what am I gonna animate? How am I gonna correspond it? Or how am I gonna have it animate to the music? Considering there's gonna be like, at least 30 to 50 plus tracks all in one video. So that's a lot of scenes to create and to animate, you know what I mean? I'm not complaining. Like, I actually do enjoy creating and animating and, you know, like doing all this 3D stuff, but it's just a theme I'm trying to think about. Like, what can I do that doesn't end up being a whole, you know, like a waste of time, and, you know, it just, like, I didn't enjoy doing it in the, like, at all. So I don't know, we'll see what happens. But if anything, damn, like, I don't want to just do a gameplay video, you know what I mean? Like, a gameplay video is fine, but ever since learning to animate and stuff like that, not like animate, but ever since learning this 3D stuff, I kind of want to incorporate it more and more into my music. So to me personally, just throwing, you know, a gameplay video would feel kind of lazy. So I don't know, I gotta think this over. I mean, I've been overthinking it for like for too long, and no good. I gotta do more stuff like this, where I literally just turn off my brain, listen to some weird stories, and just, I don't know, like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, I'm not even like there's a bit of conscious effort, of course, but like the color palette I was using, like, it just takes all the, like, this color palette just takes all the guessing work out of it. And, you know, I don't know, I just looked at, you know, like, I'll give you an example. It's like, I looked at the tree and I'm like, it looks like the coloring looks way too similar to the grass here. So what I ended up doing here was I'll just get rid of that. So yeah, like this tree. So what I ended up doing actually was just get out of this. So I took that tree image. I know it's not labeled properly, but you can see it on the outline that I'm selecting this tree. I took this tree color and I ran it through this hue saturation value node, and then I just bumped up that hue ever so slightly, and it lets me play with the, you know, with the color of the tree. Unfortunately, it also changes the color of the stem. Well, it's not unfortunate, but it is what it is. I can see it better here. Or not at all. So yeah, if I change that too much... Okay, hold on. I know what's going on. It's because I have this light and world setting. If I... Okay, that's way too sensitive. If I start changing that, you'll notice that the stem, like the stem, the tree trunk starts to change color too. And I don't really want to change it too much unless I were to separate out the objects. You know, I'm too lazy for that. So anyway, with that being said, I think it was at 62. Yeah, I just undo a bunch of stuff. But yeah, like I'm saying, it's like this little color palette helps out so much, and just using that little shader trick where you just adjust the color of it, or like all the colors, with that hue saturation value, and it kind of just, it pops out a little bit better to me now. It's like each element in the scene is a little bit distinct from each other, except the grass. I think I might need to clean that up or use a different resolution texture. But what I'm saying is, you got the browns, you got the greens, and then you got this nice bluish green, which it doesn't even look like a pine tree anymore. But that's what I'm talking about. It's like, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm not stressing about anything here. I'm just kind of letting my brain kind of guide me. It's like I may not have the skills that I want like at this moment, but I do kind of, I don't know, I pay attention to stuff, right? I kind of like always talk to myself, like, and it sounds weird, but I always like tell myself, it's like, that looks too close to this, or, you know, that needs to be you know, a different shade or a different color. You know, it needs to stick out a little bit more from what's around it. So I don't know, I just went on this weird rant. All I'm saying is, like, I really enjoy this 3D stuff, just creating stuff, and like this new pixel art thing it's been a lot of fun. I learned so much just by hammering away at these, and I'm hopeful that I can incorporate all that time and effort into this project of mine. So we'll see what happens. I might come up with something, or I might just, I don't know, throw some gameplay footage. It doesn't really matter. Like I said, there's no deadline to this. There's no timeline. there's no pressure for me to actually do this, but I didn't put out a year mix this time, right? So I kind of felt like, well, for good reason. I mean, like, obviously I was busy, but I felt like if I did put it together, it'd be low quality stuff, like just unfinished all the time stuff. And I don't feel like that's worth listening to. But this, well, not this 3D stuff, but like the music I've been working on, I've been trying to put in a lot more effort into it to kind of polish them up a little bit more. But I don't know. This is all my. I don't know. It's just me, I guess. I'm just a weird guy like that. But yeah, okay. I've talked way too much. I'm just gonna end the stream here. And like I always say, if you wanted to know what I was listening to, I left a playlist in the little chat window. And you can just look up the Exploring series SCP, and you'll find all of these videos. I would definitely recommend him if you wanted to get into these stories, because like he does it. Oh, he does it amazing. But yeah, I mean, like I always say at the end of these streams, if you have any questions, if you're watching this now or in the future, then yeah, feel free to ask me. I mean, I kind of want people to ask me questions about this because it kind of forces me just to learn a little bit more about what I'm doing and how it all like connects together. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like following these tutorials very blindly and just paint by the numbers, but at the same time, I mean, I feel like if I understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, I would have like much more, I don't know, a stronger foundation for what I'm gonna do. And I don't know, I kind of learned through these streams that just by I had like people chatting sometimes, but just by answering their questions, it kind of forces you to think about it after the stream, or you look up another tutorial video. Like you can't go to sleep, you're just looking up these videos and you're reading all these documents and you're just trying to like wrap your brain around it. Even like when I'm in the shower, if I'm like laying in bed, I'm like, what went wrong during that stream? What was I caught up on? Like what was bugging me about it? And it's just an amazing process. I love this, to be honest. Like this is just so much fun. But yeah, okay, for real, I'm gonna end it. I'm done. So I already said my piece, and the last thing, I'm losing my voice. The last thing I want to say is thank you for watching. So I'll see you next stream, or not. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm gonna do it anyway. All right, all right, that's enough. I've talked way too much.